cat is 4 things sticking down and it moves. Then the dog comes in, goes cat, cat, cat. No, dog. And then the baby says, okay, it's 4 things sticking down, moves, but the thing sticking out the end looks a bit different and it's longer. And so we're refining our concepts. And so we always know, and we're continually refining our concepts. And so through that, we know things only through double negation. Very interesting. Yeah.
But I think you need some of concentration in just like to look at it for a while. To like in the middle of the day when you see a tree, so I have like to see if...
yeah, but again, it's only because we're not familiar. So, I mean, of course, if we have no understanding of emptiness and no experience of in meditation, we'll go, look. So, but if we have some understanding and experience, and then we really start to look, and actually the things like this is not so easy because it doesn't have very distinct parts. But like, you know, like a tree, I mean a tree is like all these distinct parts. So anything that has distinct parts, it's much easier to see we are constructing that out of all these bits.
Especially if you look at the person.
Well, even body, I mean a body.
I mean, when you look at someone,
yeah.
that you have a story with him.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, if we can really do this, again, it'll be so helpful in terms of not reacting with attachment, aversion, and so forth. If we see that this is constructed.
You can get used to look at things like that?
In fact, you will... If you really get a deeper experience of emptiness, that's how you'll naturally see things. You won't have to think about it. It'll be natural. I mean, they'll still appear. It's like being lucid in a dream. If you're lucid in a dream, it'll still appear like it's there, but you know this is not how it is. You don't have to think about it and understand, well, that's not really there. I mean, that's why if you really have the deep experience of emptiness and it's still affecting your mind, things will appear the same way, but you will know it's not like that directly. You'll know that, and so then again, when you see something attractive, it's not like thinking, oh, actually, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's not there. Which, of course, if you do that, it'll help. But you'll see, and you will experientially see beauty in the eye of the beholder, and it'll be difficult to have any attachment. You'll really enjoy that experience. So, this evening's topic...
One more question.
Ah.
We need, like, the practice of emptiness is the meditations. This is one of the meditations that we can use.
Well, that was a meditation that you would use in daily life. I'm just doing that in a meditative state because we're calm, we're focused. I mean, daily life we're a little bit like this, but this is, you could do it also as a meditation practice to do this. But this is really what you would be doing in daily life, questioning appearances like this.
What were the 2 questions? The first one I forgot already.
The questions?
Yeah, the 2 questions. Is it...
Well, how does it appear to exist? And it seems like it's there, objectively. And then, is it really like that? Is it really like that? Or is it something that I've created and labelled with my conceptual mind? Just look. Oh. You want to know what's that in English? Schema? Scheme. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. There's another word. I think it starts with A.
Chant?
Huh?
Chant?
I think the word in English memory starts with A. I'll look it up. It's a. No.
Algorithm?
Huh? Something like that. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But it's very interesting. That we don't know things through affirmation. We know them through double negation. Very interesting. Okay. Two truths. In this presentation of emptiness, we have a presentation called Two Truths. Conventional truth is sometimes called relative truth and ultimate truth. And conventional truth is simply everything that exists. And of course, everything that exists is a dependent arising. And ultimate truth is how everything exists. And everything is empty of independent existence. So ultimate truth is emptiness. So emptiness is a quality of everything. It's the quality of how that thing exists. So emptiness, of course, is not something floating in space somewhere. And emptiness is, of course, a dependent arising. Because you can't have emptiness on its own. Emptiness of what? Emptiness of cup. So emptiness depends, of course, on the basis that you are, that is empty. So emptiness is also a dependent arising. But of course, it's not dependent on causes and conditions, because it's not impermanent. It's not impermanent, it's permanent in that it's not changing from moment to moment. So that's an example of a permanent phenomenon. But it is a dependent arising, nevertheless. So that's something that we see a lot, and it's sometimes this conventional truth is translated as truth for a concealer. Meaning, what is concealing reality now is our conceptual mind, because it seems like everything exists independently. So these things that exist for our mind of ignorance are true, meaning there is really something existing there independently. So that's one way of understanding this two truths, the first truth. And two truths doesn't mean two different realities or something. The ultimate truth, of course, emptiness is a quality of everything that exists, of all conventional truths. How do we go about this emptiness practice? What stages do we go through? So that's what I'd like to look at now.
Can you please, I didn't quite understand what's the, you said that dependent arising and emptiness are the two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
So what do you mean by conventional? If
Right.
emptiness is the quality of the world, then what is dependent arising?
Dependent arising is everything that exists is a dependent arising.
It's what it is.
Yeah, it depends on cause, conditions, parts, and labelling.
So how come? Why say that it's if ultimately everything is dependent arising? Then why say that the ultimate truth is that it is and not.
Because ultimate truth is because things now, conventional things, appear to exist independently. They seem to exist independently. But the ultimate truth is that's not how they exist, because they're empty of that. Because that's how they appear. So these things appear, that's why sometimes people actually don't like that translation. The word in Sanskrit and Tibetan literally means true for a concealer. What's concealing, what's true for us now, what's true for our mind of ignorance, is that things exist independently. So, of course, that's a falsity, that things don't exist like that. So ultimate truth is that these things do not exist the way in which they appear.
But
So this is really some way of talking about this. This is appearance and reality. Appearance is things appear to exist independent, but in reality they are empty of independent existence.
you wrote the convention is dependent arising, which is
It
not
is, but we don't realise that.
So I say it's conventional. It's not conventional, but the convention.
Well, conventional, this word conventional doesn't mean we understand dependent arising. The word conventional here means just by agreement, by convention. By convention, that's a cup.
Like it's the course and the salt in a way. I can relate to the fact that it is dependent arising, but it's harder for me to see ultimately that it is empty of.
Yeah, but now it seems like it exists independently, that it's not merely labelled. So this, we don't understand how these exist, these things, because we think they exist independently. But the reality is that they're empty of that. So we don't know these things to be, superficially we say, yes, cause and conditions and that, but now we do not realise that everything here is simply existing in our conceptual framework. In fact, it seems like it's the opposite to that. It seems like it exists independently there. And so the reality is that these things are not existing like that. That's ultimate truth. And then through realising ultimate truth, then we appreciate that all of these things are dependent arisings. Now we don't. Because now they seem to not be existing within our conceptual framework. They seem to be there, independent.
Is this to do with the fact that that what we perceive versus what we intellectually can appreciate?
Well, this is the difference between, again, it's often about appearance and reality. Appearance, what appears to us, it seems like everything is there, existing independently. And so we are to investigate that, because there's a discrepancy between appearance and reality.
Yeah.
And that's the discrepancy, is that this seems like it exists independently, but in reality, it's not like that. So this two truths is really all about seeing there's a discrepancy between appearance and reality. To investigate those appearances, to come to realise things do not exist as they appear.
I sort of understand what you're saying, but it feels to me like it's a very weird way to say this thing. But okay, I understand what you're saying.
Right. Because in the lower Buddhist schools, appearance is reality.
Yeah, like the way that
There is something existing there. There's no discrepancy.
Mm-hmm.
But the two truths are saying, well, there is actually.
Okay.
So now, how do we practice this emptiness? What stages do we go through? I like the Tibetan words here, they're very short. Go, nyam, dok. Go is Tibetan for intellectual. Meaning, the first step is to get an intellectual understanding of emptiness. Because otherwise, we have no framework for practice. And if we sit down and do some sort of Vipashyana practice and we have some sort of experience, we wouldn't be able to interpret that. Is that valid, or am I just spacing out, or what's going on? So we need a framework for practice, an intellectual understanding. We hear about emptiness, we reflect on it, contemplate on it. But of course, even if we get a good intellectual appreciation of emptiness, that itself won't really change anything in our life. because our behaviour is not driven by our intellectual understanding. So therefore, if we want to notice some change in our life, we need to bring that intellectual into experience, and that's nyam. Nyam means taste or experience. So then we meditate on emptiness. Again, today we were doing that by investigating me, the person. Tomorrow we're going to do that by investigating the mind. Where is this mind that seems to be here? And then if we do that search and we come to the point of not finding, then that is a taste or experience. And so what we are to do then is, if we get to that point in meditation, just rest in that experience. Just hold that experience as long as you can. So then emptiness becomes the object of your shamatha practice. Hold that as long as you can. And usually, or very often then, of course, as a beginner, if we have that experience, usually very quickly it dissipates because we get distracted by something or we get dull. So then if we lose that experience, then we go back and do the search again. Go back and do the search again. If we don't find, hold that experience. The more we can hold that experience, the more that will penetrate the mind, the more that will have a residual effect after the meditation. Maybe for some moments, minutes, hours, maybe even some days, or even a bit longer. And while that experience is affecting us after the meditation, you're going to notice a few things. You'll notice your mind is more calm than normal. You'll notice that the mental afflictions are not as strong. You often notice a lot of joy for no reason at all. It just seems to be there. And also you will notice that you'll feel a little bit more close to other people. You'll feel a little bit more compassion than normal. But then that will slowly wear off and we'll go back to our normal habits. So what we want to do, of course, is we want to stabilise this experience so that it's longer lasting. That's the next stage called top. That is realisation. And for realisation so realisation is where we are fully penetrating emptiness. For that to occur, we need shamatha. We need that mind of shamatha. Anything less than shamatha, we can have a taste of experience which can be very profound and can last quite some time, but it'll slowly wear off. Whereas the realisation then is lasting. But for this we need shamatha. And realisation comes in two stages. Conceptual and direct. Meaning now, if we meditate on emptiness and we're having an experience of emptiness, then in that experience there's a sense of me experiencing this emptiness. There's a sense of an agent, a me who's having that experience. So that's nyam, but also when we come to realisation, initially there's still a sense of me realising this emptiness. There still seems to be this sort of duality there. But if we keep meditating like this, then slowly that sense of me, the meditator, and emptiness, the object that I'm realising, that sense of duality will collapse, and then we'll come to a direct realisation of emptiness. In that experience, while we're having that experience, there's no sense of me at all. Zero. There is just the experience of emptiness happening, direct. And to talk a little bit more about this process here, let's use a chart. Right at the end, the last chart, the Mahayana path chart. I mean, there's a lot of detail here, but I'll just mention a few important points to get a bit of a flavour. So this is the standard model that you'll see in terms of the stages of progress through this emptiness practice. And this is a 5-stage model called the 5 paths. And what we see here right at the beginning, there's a number 2 underneath. And number 2 says, uncontrived renunciation bodhicitta. So this is the path to enlightenment. So, therefore, to enter that, remember, we have to have the aspiration for enlightenment, which is bodhicitta. So when we cultivate the aspiration of bodhicitta, we enter the path. And then from this point, we are what's called a bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva is someone who has bodhicitta. And the first stage of the path is called path of accumulation. So what we're doing here is we're accumulating what's called merit and wisdom. Merit just means the result of virtue. So effectively what we're doing is practicing these 2 wings of practice of wisdom and compassion. Wisdom of emptiness, compassion of activities. And here, when we're on the path of accumulation, our emptiness practice is it's a conceptual realization. Because already here we have shamatha. And then what happens is, even before now, we have to sort of alternate shamatha vipassana. Because whenever we start to investigate, that can unbalance the mind a bit. If it gets too unbalanced, we stop and we just rest in shamatha again. And then we investigate and rest. So we're alternating. But what we find here is that at this point here, our investigation doesn't disturb the shamatha, in fact it enhances, and they become unified. And so that's what we see here, number 4. The union of shamatha and vipassana observing emptiness. Remember we saw that back in the shamatha chart in the first half of the retreat. So this is where we unify shamatha and vipassana on emptiness, and then we move to the next stage called path of preparation. And we're still having this conceptual realization of emptiness. So as long as it's a conceptual realization, it's not strong enough to eliminate any mental afflictions, but it is strong enough to temporarily subdue them. So what you will notice here, but even much earlier, but as you move more and more you'll notice it, is again outside the meditation, particularly around here, mental afflictions hardly come up, and if they come up they're very weak and they last a very short time. And preparation here is we're preparing for our first direct realization of emptiness. So here we're meditating, we're realizing emptiness, but there's still a sense, me the meditator, realizing this emptiness. There's still this sense of duality there. But as we meditate here more, that sense of gap between me, the meditator, and emptiness, the object, collapses. And when it completely collapses, we enter the third stage called the path of seeing. And now we are seeing or realizing emptiness directly. And in that experience, again, there's no sense of me, the meditator. There's just the experience of emptiness. It's said like it's like water poured into water, often the analogy. This direct realization of emptiness now is strong enough to start to wipe out mental afflictions and suffering, but not in one go. And so what we're doing over the next stage, path of meditation, which is usually divided up into the 9 parts, is we continue to meditate on emptiness directly, wiping out more and more ignorance, mental afflictions. So these 9 stages here, plus this path of seeing together, this is called the 10 grounds, or 10 boogies in Sanskrit. And as we're going along path of meditation, realising emptiness directly, wiping out more mental afflictions and suffering, eventually here at the end of the 7th ground, we've now wiped out all ignorance, all mental afflictions, all suffering. We have achieved nirvana. But we still haven't finished the job, because remember those cognitive obscurations we had, those very subtle stains in our mind that are causing this mistaken dualistic appearance. We keep meditating on emptiness and we eliminate them on the last 3 grounds. And then at the end of the 10th ground, we sit down to meditate again on emptiness. And up until this point, we're alternating. Either we are directly realizing emptiness, and at that time nothing else is appearing, or outside of that meditation we see the phenomenal world. So either we're seeing the phenomenal world or we're seeing emptiness. But when we sit down the last time at the 10th ground and realize emptiness directly and wipe out that last subtle stain in the mind, then suddenly the whole world appears to us and we're still realizing emptiness. And so that's when we achieve the 5th stage, we achieve enlightenment, and that's called path of no more learning. So someone who's achieved enlightenment doesn't have this mistaken dualistic appearance that we have. I mean, to really appreciate that would be difficult, because we've never had that experience. So that's very, very briefly the standard model that you often see when we talk about this emptiness practice in terms of this Mahayana path. There are other models, and tomorrow when we look at, we're going to do this Vipashyana practice of not focusing on the person but the mind, which is what we often find in the what's called the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions, systems of practice in Tibetan Buddhism. And in that system, those systems, they usually don't use this model. They use a different model. And we'll have a bit of a look at that tomorrow. So, I mean, I could spend a lot of time on this, but I think that's enough for our purposes. More than enough, probably. Just to get a vague idea about the path in front, what's coming up. Any questions? Yeah.
So let's say we enter the path, so we already have Shamatha, and then we die. So we're born again with Shamatha, Shamatha babies.
What you will find is that there are different. Actually, there's a couple of different assertions. There's what's called irreversibility. Like when you get a certain point, that's it. You're on a one-way ticket, even if you die. There are a couple of different assertions about where that exactly is. But often they really, somewhere around the front at the beginning here, that if we get to that point, in fact, common assertion is that this bodhicitta, they also talk about a number of